That'll do it for the intro clips. Let's get this Sunday morning session started. Harley, what's up? Man, look at that. You're here from the jump this morning. I love it. I got church in like an hour and a half, so got some time to kill, got some amusing things happening in the Instagram and Twitter world to go over. So looking forward to that. Maybe talk a little bit about personal subjects such as restarting your entire life over. Occasionally people have to do that, and it can be quite emotionally difficult and disruptive. And seeing as I'm about to do that here in about 3 weeks, it's probably a good time for me to just have a self-talk session about how I've done that twice before. It is not a big deal. Sometimes you just got to do it. So we'll go more into that. I mentioned the Alabama move for Josh is kind of like life 3.0. So I've already done 2 entire lifetimes at this point. So I'm getting pretty good at it. I'm getting pretty good at that old country song, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. You know, you devote yourself to a certain path for a number of years. You fully pursue it to the best of your ability. And at some point, you do need to make a call. Is this going the same direction as I initially planned and hoped that it was going to go? Or have we stalled out? Or have I actually landed somewhere that isn't even where I thought was where I wanted to be? And that's kind of what happened to me in Life 2.0. So that's why we got to go reboot, do Life 3.0. We'll talk more about that, though, after we hit the news clips that I want to go over. Where to start? You know, I love bragging about myself. Everybody does. You know, anytime I call a news reaction where I predict the future, I predict what's going to happen, that always makes me feel good because it does. It's you don't want to just pat yourself on the back for the sake of pride. Pride is a sin, obviously. But sometimes in these kind of things where you're trying to read the tea leaves, you're trying to read everything that's going on in the culture and the culture wars, all the suppression of freedom of speech, and you're trying to put together all the pieces as far as who's in control and all that stuff. When you're able to accurately predict the future, that tells you that you have a good read on what's going on. You have figured out who's pulling the strings, who's being blackmailed, you know, who's really in control, all that stuff. So when you can predict the future, that means you're on the right track. Let's get one more clip of our man Nick here. Love my man Nick. All right, Nick. So if you don't know Nick Fuentes, you should be watching his show, America First. He's the most banned individual next to Alex Jones in the world. So, I was actually watching a couple documentaries about him, and one of the documentaries is called "The Most Banned Man in the World," and the other one is like "The Extremist Next Door." What's going on, Banda? Good to see you in here again this morning. Morning for me, I know. Evening for you. And so I watched these documentaries yesterday about Nick Fuentes. I'll pull it up. Nick Fuentes, most dangerous. Look, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center and according to the ADL, Nick Fuentes is the most dangerous man in the world. Why is he the most dangerous man in the world? Because he talks about controversial subjects such as the Great Replacement. It's not a theory. You know, when you have Chuck Schumer coming out and saying we're going to naturalize all 11 million illegal immigrants who are illegally in our country. We're just going to make them overnight become citizens. What religion is Schumer, by the way? If anybody wants to look that up, I don't know. And meanwhile, we have a negative net birth rate in the country. So it's a proven math situation that natural American-born citizens are being replaced. But that's neither here nor there. Nick talks about that. Nick talks about the realities of racial realism. And this is a super tough one because people get really uncomfortable when you start saying things that can be interpreted as, oh, you're saying one race is smarter than another race. You're saying one race is more violent than another race. And again, when you just share the data that we have, it's like, I'm not saying these things. I'm telling you what the sociological, empirical evidence that we have says. And so I watched Nick Fuentes on No Jumpers interview with a few black guys, and it was an interesting conversation. And they basically wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt because he has this reputation as a white nationalist, white supremacist, misogynistic, racist, homophobic, everything that the ADL just pulls out the punch card and starts going down the list. So they all wanted to know, like, legitimately, why do people say these things about you? And so he laid out his case for the known differences between races. I'll briefly recap. I can't quite put it as eloquently as Nick has because I haven't talked about it as many times. But, if you want some examples, you can start with Asian people. We know for a fact, it's not controversial, it's just what the tests show. Asian people score higher on math tests and all types of standardized testing. Okay? Like, it's just true. That doesn't mean white people are stupid. It doesn't mean black people are stupid. It doesn't mean Asians are superior because they seemingly have higher IQ scores and higher test scores. That's just a fact. You don't see me here as somebody who's not Asian saying, oh, so you're asserting that Asians are supreme or better than other races? No, I'm just saying that there's a category in life, and that is the intelligence quotient and standardized testing in mathematics. Asians excel at these things. It is what it is, guys. And so that's Asians. And then when you look at black people, what do black people excel at? Well, they excel at music and the arts and athleticism. That's their positive attributes that they especially shine when compared to other races. You look at white people. What are white people especially good at? You're looking at the body of evidence in history, not like conjecture or opinion. Well, look at classical European architecture. Look at European literature. There's not really an equivalent of those things accomplished by other races, the same way there's not equivalent sports or music accomplishments different than the black race, the same way that other races don't score as well and don't have as high IQs as Asian people. So race realism needs to be accepted as something that's not controversial. It is true. Honestly, before the entire politically correct age that we live in, everybody knew there were differences between the races. Like, it was just kind of like, yeah, it is what it is. Let's not try to lie about it. Let's just acknowledge that we're different and we each have unique advantages, comparative advantages in different parts of life. So in my opinion, that's not that controversial. But if you're trying to talk to a liberal snowflake and you even imply whatsoever that the races at a biological level have different outcomes in life due to their genetics, that is racism, which is absurd. That's just absurd. In my opinion, it's just absurd. So, Nick laid out that logic, and, to all the guys on the show's credit, they're like, well, you can't really argue with that. Black people really do deliver when it comes to art and music and that kind of stuff and sports. And we all know Asians test well, and you can't really argue against the fact that you look at these beautiful castles and all these churches that European white people have built over the millennia. I mean, listen, there's a difference. Let's acknowledge it and move on. Stop pretending to hate each other. So yeah, that was how I spent last night. I watched some interesting documentaries that gave you a behind the scenes look at Nick Fuentes' life, and you got a feel for the guy. He's obviously accomplished success and gained a following in his little niche of the world that he's been shoved into. It's not like he chose to not be on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. He's been banned. Not by choice, as said, but by the corrupt, high influence activist groups like the Southern Poverty, what is it called? SPLC and the ADL and these other alleged activist groups who really only exist to push one ethnicity or religious agenda. Okay, so that's my man, Nick. This one was pretty funny. World Government Summit 2022 just happened recently. This is the same cabal of people who do the World Economic Forum, same cabal of people who do the World Health Organization. It's the globalists. It's the people who think we need one centralized mega government to run the entire world, that there shouldn't be sovereign nations, that we should have one language that the entire world speaks, that we should have one currency that the entire world uses, and so on. What's going on, Pessoa Sam? I don't know how the hell to say your name, but I see you're a first-time chatter, so thank you for dropping in. We're having a fun Sunday morning, talking about some things in the news. We watched a little bit of motivational Christian material to kick things off. A little like it's a pre-church sample of our man. And now we're talking about some news headlines. So this first one here is a clip. It's a screenshot of a YouTube video where you have the cabal, the globalist cabal, meeting for this World Government Summit, right? And this is the title of their own broadcast. Somebody else didn't take this and interpret it this way. They titled this video, "Are We Ready for a New World Order?" And this is on the World Government Summit's channel. Okay, they chose that title. And then you have the fact checkers, the automatic fact checkers that YouTube has built into its website, coming in immediately and saying, the New World Order is a conspiracy theory which hypothesizes a secret emerging totalitarian world government. Like, you can't even write satire that's this on point. Like, it's sitting there saying world government. It's the name of the summit. And you're sitting here trying to say, suggesting that there's a world government is a conspiracy theory. And not only that, this very clearly existing and real world government is hosting a panel saying, do we need a new world order? And of course, your fact checker says the new world order is a conspiracy theory. So, if you had any doubt whatsoever in these fact checkers that are tacked on to all the social media sites, they're tacked onto your Twitter feed and your Instagram feed, just ignore them. Just ignore them. 100%. That's a real red pill that people, unfortunately, it's almost like only people who've already taken the red pill know to ignore the fact checkers. Because it's absurdity like this, where things are clearly true, and they still try to say it's a conspiracy theory, you have to know to just disregard the fact checkers. And it's honestly helpful to share stuff like this. This is why it's kind of, the social media exists in a weird place where a lot of people use it to share their life. Here's pictures of me, my fitness progress. Here's pictures of my dog. Here's pictures of my food. They just want to share their personal life, and they don't necessarily want to be social media activists, right? They don't want to share anything controversial that's going to hurt somebody's feelings. If they had problems with COVID, they weren't going to say it. If they have problems with the overt racism, the anti-white racism that's happening in America, they don't want to say it. If they have problems with the gender ideology and saying men can get pregnant or that we should castrate our children, they don't want to say it because they don't want to offend anybody. They just want to use these social media sites to share pictures of themselves and keep everything politically friendly. Well, the problem is that if everybody just agrees to that, then this kind of shit continues to slip under the radar as commonly accepted. It's okay. If nobody's calling it out, if nobody's making fun of it, then, hey, it must be real. So I say all of that to say I'm going to like this post. Make sure you give it some love. I'm going to leave a comment. What can I say? Very obvious conspiracy theory right here. It's not the most insightful comment, but as you guys know, the algorithm You feed it comments, you feed it likes. That means the post gets more eyeballs on it. That means more people start to become awake to the obvious uselessness of these fact checkers. It's not even that they're useless, guys. It's actually worse than that. They're sinister. They are, if you know how Satan works, Satan doesn't just spread lies. He takes the truth and inverts it. He actually makes people believe the opposite of the truth. And so in this case, when you have the world government itself saying, here we are talking about the New World Order, Satan is going to try to use people to say, you didn't see that. That's not what they said. That's a conspiracy theory. And so you got to know, like, once you're savvy to Satan and his tricks and you see these inversions happening, where it is the literal opposite of the truth, it helps discern, it helps discern who the Christ-like people are in this war and who the others are.